Good morning, everyone. We're so glad you're here with us for the second of 3 weeks of adult formation on the issue of homelessness in the Roanoke Valley. Today, we have with us a real treat, Muddeman Beebe, who is the executive director of Family Promise here in Roanoke. And so she's one of ours. And she knows a whole lot about this because she's been doing this a long time. I could take the time to tell you what Family Promise is, but I'm sure Marie's got it. So please welcome Marie.
Thank you. It's good to be home. So, I haven't been here since, I have to confess. I know we're not Catholic, but I feel the need to confess that I haven't been here since before COVID. So, except for our funeral. So, I know, isn't that terrible? So, thank you for having me today. I'm with Family Promise of Greater Roanoke. Let me start by telling you a little bit about one of our families. The family came to us. They had been at the rescue mission. They had experienced a fire. She was living in Craig County with her children, and the building that the house that they were staying in burned to the ground. And very quickly they had to move, and they went to the rescue mission, and they stayed there for a few days. And she is Jewish, and she was required to go to chapel. And that was very uncomfortable for her. And she decided that she would come to Family Promise. So she reached out to us and she came to our program. While she was in our program, it was her and her son. Her daughter was at the time with her husband, her ex-husband. So it was just her and her son. While she was in the program, she was constantly helping others. We had a woman in the program that had just found out she was pregnant and she was not very healthy. And this person worked with her and helped her exercise, etc. So they developed this great relationship. This woman was a massage therapist, and all of her equipment had burned. So we got her a massage table. It was a gently used massage table, and she started her own business. Since then, she's opened a massage business. She's gone back to school and gotten a master's in nutrition. She owned Garden Song Eco Cafe. Some of you may have eaten there on 5th Street. And she had a healing arts studio there. Now she has sold those, and she has Giggles the Bus, which is a mobile cafe and healing lounge. Maya Itta, which some of you may know, was in our program. She and her son and her daughter are now fully housed and have been. They own their own home and have been since they left us. She's the exceptional story. And of course, we like those for our program, but she's not your typical story. But we do have folks like this. So who qualifies for our program? It's families with children. They have to have kids school age or younger with them. Now, we do not identify a family. If they identify as a family, we take them as a family. So if it's a mom and kids, or grandma and grandkids, or a lesbian couple, or an uncle with kids, anything, as long as they have custody of those children, we allow them to be in our program, and we allow them to stay together as a family. Some of the other programs in the Valley require you to have your marriage license to be able to stay together as a couple. Now, how many of you know where your marriage license is? And if there was a fire, would you gather that? So I just want you to understand that the families that we serve are not they have very minimal barriers, as far as, things that are going to keep them from being housed. So we fully vet our families. They have to go through a criminal background check to make sure they do not have a violent criminal history. They also cannot be on drugs or alcohol while they're in our program. And if they have a serious mental health issue, it has to be treated. Now, granted, we get families that have not been diagnosed with their mental health issue, but the ones that know, like recently we had somebody that was schizophrenic. He was not on medication, was out of control. We cannot handle that. So what's the reason for that? Why do we eliminate some of the greater barriers? And it's because we work only with families with children, and we work with volunteers. So because of those two things, it limits our skills to be able to serve other families. So what's our process? Oops, wrong way. So how does our program work? Our program is designed to be a rotational schedule. So they stay in a given church or temple for a week, then they go to another facility for a week, etc. To enter our program, they interview with us, and then if we have an opening, we take them. We take a maximum of 4 families with 14 people. Why 4 families? Why 14 people? Most congregational facilities have 4 classrooms that can be used to house families, and the families can stay together as a unit. The other thing is we have a 15-passenger van, so that determines the 14 people. Family Promise is part of a national organization. We're an affiliate. What that means is we pay dues, and they provide training and guidance, but we are our own separate 501c3. We operate individually. We can do almost anything we want to and still be a part of Family Promise. Family Promise started by Karen Olson, who remember during the Bush administration, the Points of Light Award, she received that. So she's very well known. She has accomplished a lot. Karen was a marketing person for a razor company in New York. She went to Central Park. She was having lunch, eating her sandwich, and sat down next to this lady. And the lady mentioned that she was homeless, and Karen felt like, let me share my sandwich with you. And she said, I don't want your sandwich. I want you to listen to my story. And so Karen listened to her story, and she and her children started making 200 sandwiches every week, driving into New York and giving them out every Saturday morning in Central Park. And she started to see more and more families that were experiencing homelessness, children that were on the street or were in a shelter, but were on the street during the day. And so she started brainstorming, went back to her community and said, let's start a program here. She had everything arranged. The families were ready to start. They were going to stay in a shelter, and it didn't pass the zoning. And she already had the families ready to go. So she went to her church. She said, help. So they stayed in the church basement for a while. And then, the next week came, and the church was kind of tired of them. So they went to another church, and that's how this all started. Now there's 200 of us across the nation. Karen is no longer our CEO, but she stays very involved. So that's how this program kind of started. It started here in Roanoke with our friend Gates to Heart. and Dan Dowdy and a few others that got together and realized that this was a great program for the Roanoke area. And it has been going since 1998. Thank you, Gates. Yeah. So we started that way. We started out just doing a shelter program. And the way it works is the families go to a given congregational facility on Sunday night at 6 p.m. They're at like today, they will go to First United Methodist in Salem. They stay there for the night and the congregation provides the meal, evening host, and overnight host. So they do all the volunteers. There are no staff there, just the families. Now, keep in mind, our families have been heavily vetted, so they're not scary families as such. They're very, they're lovely, most of them. There's a few. But they go to the church at 6 p.m. They spend the night, and at 7 a.m. we pick them up in our van and take them to our family center in Salem, where they are getting case management all day long. So they are working with one of our case managers to determine what led them to homelessness and what they need to do to get out of homelessness. So we do a full comprehensive life management plan to help them move forward. It can be getting the kids in school. It can be making sure the kids have their shots. It can be getting birth certificates that they don't have, or shot records. It can be looking for jobs and working on your financial budget, etc. So we do very intensive case management. Then every evening at 6 p.m. they go back to the church. They stay until the next morning. The staff is on call. So if there's an emergency, we can be reached. And usually they're within about 30 minutes. This goes on until Sunday morning at 7 a.m. They get up, they leave the church they're staying at, gather up their things, and then that night they go to a different facility. So this goes on. We have 23 congregations with 12 groups that host. So for example, St. John's hosts with Temple Emmanuel. So it's a faceted, what's the word I'm looking for? Inclusive, what's the religious word? Ecumenical, there we go. Thank you. Great. I couldn't think of the word. Ecumenical program. We worked with, we used to have a Hindu community that was involved. They became a little bit too small and dropped the program, but we are trying to expand to include the Muslim community, etc. So we are not a religious organization. We work with a religious community whose faith encourages them to help others, and they have buildings that are not being used during the week. Okay. So as you know, when you're working a puzzle, that there's all sorts of pieces, and you may not be able to figure out where they belong. And I don't know if anybody's had this happen, but you do the puzzle and you find out at the very end you have a piece missing, and how frustrating that is. Or I have a friend who just posted on Facebook, puzzles became popular again during COVID. So she's been doing puzzles and she posted a picture of them, and she had an extra piece. And she was so frustrated. Like, what do you do with this extra piece? So, but we realized that everyone's issues, everyone's personal challenges and opportunities are different. And so we have to target our program for each individual. So we have, what is our program? We have the shelter program, which we've had since '98. So they stay with us. We tell them it's a maximum 30-day program. Our goal is to get them permanently housed within 30 days. If they reach the 30 days and they're not making any progress, they may not be a good fit for our program. They might do better in a different type of program, but we try to work with them and keep them in the program so that by 60 days, they are housed. Currently, because of the housing shortage, affordable housing shortage, it is taking us much longer to find housing, and I'll get to that in a minute. So we have our shelter program where we are congregations are providing meals and overnight hosting and the shelter, and then we are providing the case management. So what happens when a family moves out? We have an aftercare program. So this is, we were the first organization in the Valley to start this aftercare program for those exiting shelter. We've been doing this probably 8 years, and it's very successful and makes us different than most other programs. Our case managers, we have one that's specifically targeted to helping them find housing and helping them stay housed. So once they move out, if they want a mentor, we attach them to a mentor. If they want to come to skill building classes, we make those available. But the case manager meets with them at least once a week for the first month. After that, twice a week, and it dwindles down with the goal of them being fully self-sufficient within 6 months. We also started during COVID. We realized that many of our folks could not afford their rent and their utilities because they had lost their job. We had a very generous donor who gave us $17,000 to start out with. And that money was used for prevention. So it helped pay for utilities, rent, anything to keep our families housed during COVID. That program has grown exponentially, particularly in this environment. We have, in the last year, we've used about $50,000 in prevention money. So if they are close to being evicted, their utilities are ready to be turned off, they reach out to us, we pay their bill, and then they can, we do a little bit of case management to keep them permanently housed. For folks that are already homeless, doubled up, staying with friends, sleeping on sofas, paying for a hotel themselves, of those folks, we call that diversion. We're trying to keep them from going into shelter. And so they may have jobs, they may have everything they need, they just can't afford first month's rent and all those things that are required to move into housing. It used to be pre-COVID that rent was running about $750 and they paid first month's rent and a utility deposit. Now they're requiring 2 months utility deposit, 2 months security deposit, sorry, and 1 month rent. So that's 3 months up front. Rent is running $1,150. So this has become a huge issue for our community. It means folks are in our program longer, and it is highly affecting the number of street homeless, etc. We have a furniture ministry. So when families are moving into permanent housing, if they don't have furniture or dishes or any of the things that they need, we provide those. Those are things, that's a way you can participate. If you have gently used furniture, dishes that you no longer use, silverware, pots and pans, those kinds of things, you can donate those to Family Promise and they will go directly to a family. Granted, that all depends on our storage space. So if you contact us and we're full storage wise, we'll refer you to Habitat for Humanity Restore, and we have a collaboration with them where they will take that furniture, they'll go pick it up, It is marked for Family Promise, and when they sell it, we get half of the proceeds in a voucher form so our families can go shopping. So it's a good collaborative program that helps us out when we can't actually take the items. We offer life skills classes on Tuesday nights. These are anything from nutrition and being a good tenant, healthy exercising, healthy bodies, parenting, dental health, anything. We had a smoking cessation class that oddly, well, not oddly, no one that was smoking came. All the people that weren't smoking came, so it was an interesting one. When I saw that we were going to be doing this, I thought, no smoker is going to come to this class. I just know it. And sure enough. But oddly, the others did, so they had a good time. We also offer transitional housing, which is a term of the past, but we purchased when we realized that many of our families have high eviction rates, low credit scores, etc., that it was very difficult for them to get an apartment. We purchased a duplex, which is over near the SPCA, and if we will put a family in the duplex, they stay there for 6 months, they pay an affordable rent, and we continue to do intensive case management with them to help them move, pay off their evictions, improve their credit score, get some other things together so that when they move again, it'll be a permanent place for them. And we also do welcome home kids. So we have a relationship later this month. Wells Fargo gave us $10,000 to put together welcome home kids. These will include a vacuum cleaner, a microwave, dishes, towels, sheets, cleaner, bucket, mop, all those things. It's $300 worth of stuff. We'll be able to help 32 families. And so when they move into their new home, they'll have all the things they need so they won't have to spend money on that. So what did we do during the infamous COVID? If you remember, it happened suddenly. Monday, they were staying in congregational facilities, and Thursday we had rotated to another program. So we moved very quickly. We shut down the congregational rotation schedule, so no volunteers were involved. And we rented 2 apartments, and then we used our duplex, so that gave us 4 places so that we could continue to serve 4 families. During that time, the families stayed in the apartments. We met with them either virtually or we would meet with them outside. The congregation still provided food, and usually it was brought to the family center and we got it to the families. They had no contact with volunteers whatsoever, and it was a hard time for everybody. We noticed, we had a lot of folks that said, why don't you continue doing this? It's easier. The families seem happier. The families did seem happy, and they stayed there forever. Why would you want to move when you have somebody paying for your apartment and your utilities? And so we had to not be so nice. And we encouraged them to move. Some families were happy to move, and some families said, well, why can't I stay here? So it was an expensive program because we were having to pay utilities, rent apartments. Fortunately, we received a federal grant to cover that. So it worked well, but we realized it was temporary. So we kept trying to reopen, and congregations were scared to reopen, which makes complete sense. So what are we doing? We returned the 1st of September to the rotational schedule. And every single morning, the families are screened for COVID. We do the questions. When they come into our program, they're tested for COVID. And then once they're in our program, we test them every morning with the questions and the temperature. That way we're ensuring that they're staying healthy and they're not exposing you to any type of COVID. However, they're exposed to you. So we're trying to make sure that we keep it as safe as possible. It was a big deal to return to the rotational schedule. We found the biggest challenge was hiring drivers. People didn't want to ride in a vehicle with a bunch of families they didn't know due to COVID because there wasn't an opportunity for separation. We officially hired our final driver Friday. She starts tomorrow, and I'm so thankful. So, how successful are we? I'm going to give you two different sets of stats. The first one was pre-COVID, when things were normal, our old normal. We serve between 26 and 30 families every year. In 2019, we served 26 families. 88% of those moved to permanent housing. And the average length of stay was only 45 days. Our aftercare program served 51 families, and 90% of those stayed permanently housed. These numbers far exceed any other program in the Valley. There's two reasons. One, it's a small program, so we can focus on the 4 families. Two, our families don't have some of the critical issues like drug dependency, mental health issues, those types of things. And thirdly, they're meeting hundreds of people every week like you who know of jobs, who know of apartments, who love them and give them a sense of self-worth. So in 2021, last year, we only served 18 families, and only 67% of those moved to permanent housing. It was taking so long because of the lack of affordable housing that people just got frustrated and moved back in with family. So our length of stay went from 45 days to 57 days. Aftercare remained pretty stable. We served 41 families, and 88% of those stayed permanently housed. Our prevention program, which was new, we served 31 families, and 90% of those were able to stay permanently housed. We do a strategic plan every year, and we did one in 2021, and it was to last us through 2025, and I think we will finish it up this year, if not the first part of next year. We realize that volunteerism is changing, that congregations are getting smaller and getting older, and so we needed some new opportunities. So we're looking at businesses, clubs, those types of things. So Wells Fargo has a thing where you can volunteer for the day and they pay you. So why not take opportunities with that? So we have hired a volunteer coordinator that will be starting the 14th. She'll be part-time, and she'll be recruiting and training volunteers. We expanded our life skills classes. And one of the big things is we're purchasing a new family center. So our history with our family center is when we first opened, we were in the basement of Christ Episcopal, I believe. Is that correct, Gates? I think so. And they, right now we're directly behind Salem Presbyterian Church in a house that's 1,700 square feet. We have 5 staff in there and 14 individuals at the same time. and it is bedlam. The families are in one room. It's the living room of this house with the dining room. And right now we have 2 children that, no joke, cry from morning to night. And I've heard Baby Shark way. If you do not know Baby Shark, please look it up. You will hate it from the second you hear it, but you need to know what we're talking about. So we're real excited. Our house is small, and we put a contract on a house, on a building out off of Williamson Road that's in Roanoke County. We are going through a feasibility study to make sure the house is zoned properly. I mean, the building is zoned properly and all that. When I moved into Family Promise 11 years ago, almost 12, the first thing I noticed was the building was not accessible. And that is a huge issue with federal grants, which we were receiving. So I've had to play the song and dance and, with the federal folks to be able to still get that money. So we need to fix that. So some of you may know of us as Interfaith Hospitality Network, and that was our original name. My first day on the job, sitting in my new desk. No one came to welcome me that day. I was there by myself. I locked the building, go into my office. No staff worked that day, so I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was just there. And my phone rings and I answered the phone. Thank you for calling Interfaith Hospitality Network. How can I help you? I'd like the usual. The usual. Do you take credit cards? I don't know. I'm new. I don't know. What are you wanting to do, sir? Well, I want the usual. The usual what? Well, This is a hospitality service. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I said, yes, it's called Interfaith Hospitality. And he says, oh shit. So at that point, I knew that we may need to change our name. So a couple years afterwards, Family Promise National went from Interfaith Hospitality to Family Promise, and they encouraged all of us to change our name. So we did. Many folks still refer to us as Interfaith, and that's fine. But we are not a hospitality. Although if it would raise money. No. So we collaborate a lot. I've mentioned the congregations. We collaborate with Roanoke College. We have a fellow that works with us. We have students that volunteer on a regular basis. We have an exciting new project that the city is funding through ARPA funds that we are doing with Habitat for Humanity. Habitat and a business called Build Smart Institute will be training construction workers and starting this, they will be building, I'm not sure how many houses that will be renovated. They will be fully accessible and mostly green. And those will, 2 of those will go to Family Promise, of which we will use those for our transitional. So we'll have the duplex and the other 2. We work with the Financial Empowerment Center. We are very involved in collaborations throughout the community, and that is our goal. We do not want to duplicate what others are doing. We recently had someone that had some special mental health issues, and they asked us why we could handle it, and we said, no, we're trying to create a network for our families so that when they exit our program, they have a network built to support them, to not depend on Family Promise. Now, we have families that left us 15 years ago that when they hit a bump, they call Family Promise, and we love that and we want to help them. But we also know that we need to teach them to be sustainable. So how can you help? St. John's, you can reach out to Gates to Heart and tell him you want to spend the night. Spending the night is the easiest job, I promise you. You walk in, you visit with the families for a few minutes, you spend the night. Yes, it's easy, isn't it? Yes.
For decades now.
Yeah, he's been spending the night, and you go in, you can read a book, and you do not have any children or spouses annoying the fire out of you. The kids are usually in bed by 8:30 or 9:30, and so you have the whole night. I love it because I can read uninterrupted. It's great. And you go to sleep and you wake up the next morning, you tell the families to get up and you go. It's easy. And women can do it. It's okay. These are not scary families, I promise you. You can help with food. I had the idea that, they used to stay in the lighthouse, and you could turn the lighthouse into transitional housing, and Family Promise could do that for you, manage that for you. There's lots of opportunities. You can donate to our furniture ministry. You can offer to drive the van. You can provide childcare for our skill building. You can teach a life skills class. You can donate. You can attend our fundraisers. We are doing one Thursday night, November 10th, at the Jefferson Center at Fitzpatrick Hall. It's a storytelling event, and we have 5 or 6 folks telling their stories about either their involvement with Family Promise or the theme Reimagining Home. If you've been to Hoot and Holler, it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. There's beer and wine for those of you that might make a difference. Since you are Episcopalians, I can say that. And our infamous Gates to Heart will be sharing his story. And we have a former guest who's sharing his story, Joe Cobb. For those of you that know Joe, he was our director at one point. And so I don't know what Joe's going to talk about. And we have a few others. But so I want to back up a little bit and tell you what happens here at St. John's when you're hosting. They used to stay at the lighthouse, and due to our wonderful fire marshal, that is no longer an option. So currently, the families, when they're to be here, are staying in our duplex, and we held on to one of the apartments. So we're only taking 3 families for now. And as Second Pres is renovating what used to be called the Alpha Mega House, and it will be called the Alexa House in memory of Alexa Cannon, who was killed by her roommate at Radford University. That house is being renovated for any congregation in the Roanoke Valley to use to offer services for Family Promise. So that's where you will eventually be. For now, you're providing meals and for our families in the duplex and the apartment. So when it's your week, they go back to the duplex, and then on Sunday, they go to the next congregation. So I know there's lots of questions, and I thought we'd take this opportunity for you to ask some questions. We have a few minutes. Yes.
How does a family in need of these services find you?
How do they find us? 211, which is a resource and referral number like 911. They contact us directly. The rescue mission, if they have families that are not necessarily a good fit for them, they'll send them to us. Families that they know would do well in our program, so we work collaboratively. There's a thing called Central Intake in Roanoke. Central Intake will review the family and send them to the most appropriate place, and so we do get some folks from there. Yes, Gates.
Marie, could you get a show of hands, people
Folks.
involved?
If you've been involved with Family Promise, raise your hand. Okay. For those of you that didn't raise your hand will be up the next time I speak. Yes. One of the problems with the lighthouse, I'm just gonna speak frankly about this, is that all the families were in one side. And so if it was a big family, they had to crawl over beds to get out of the room. That is really not safe. If you were to use both sides, it could easily be used. We had been told by the fire marshal that it had to have a full fire suppression system and all this stuff. We have since found out that's not true. So you would need to work with code enforcement because it's temporary housing, not permanent housing. But the building could be used if we were using both sides. Okay, we use both sides. Why
That's a
can't we
long
use
story.
both
We
sides?
don't necessarily need to get into today, but
Okay,
the vestry does talk about it, obviously, quite a bit. And we've been going through the project committee has recently been, I'll just step out right here.
good,
The
thank you.
property committee recently has been through multiple feasibility studies. Obviously, we've been working with the fire marshal on this because we regret that we can't have family promise in there for a while. But it's just not quite set up for that. And the other side has been used by Camoyo and also for staffing, for housing, for staffing at times. Trey Light lived there. So it would take a lot of transition and change to move this whole system apart, which, vestry is looking at. The property committee has been studying it. But now with the most recent developments at Second Pres, we're partnering with Second Pres to raise money and help them with their building. So we might not need them in the same way. So there's a lot going on with it. But yes, we are talking about it for sure.
Thank you, David.
Yes.
So I knew that was going on, but it's not my opportunity to say, not my privilege to talk about. What else? Yes.
I have a question for the group. How many knew about Family Promise when they came in this room? Or did not know about?
How
Family
many didn't know?
All right. Oh, that's a good thing.
That's good. Yes, you did not know. Yes.
Of the success stories you have, how many people come back and help you out in some meaningful way?
Quite a few. We do life skills classes, and some of them come back and provide childcare or dinner for our life skills class. Most of our families are still impoverished. And so we're trying to help them move forward, but their educational level is not going to allow them to have a really prosperous position. So I wouldn't say a whole lot, but some. We wish it were more. They do come back for life skills classes, but we bribe them. We give them, gift certificates and gift cards and that kind of stuff. So. The waiting list, it's interesting. Our waiting list can be anywhere from 5 to 20. But when we start calling them to bring them in, many of them we cannot get in touch with. Their phone numbers are no longer valid. So it moves quickly through the list when we have them. We almost always are full.
Marie, what are your exclusionary criteria? You talked about vetting families. What would be, a factor that would exclude a family from the
A violent criminal history against persons. So they may have a felony for drugs, but if it's a crime against persons, no, we will not take them. If they have a serious mental health issue that's not being treated, we are not qualified to help them.
But if they're in treatment.
If they're in treatment, we can help them. And particularly, we have a lot of folks that have mental health workers, and that's great. They do well in our program. They have to be sober while in our program. The use of marijuana has become very extensive, and we were experiencing problems with having any families that qualified for our program. So marijuana stays in your system for so long that what we do is we test them. If they test positive the first day, we ask them the last date of use. And if it was a week ago, then we test them again 3 weeks from now, so it's a month. During that time, if they show signs of drug use, then we have to exit them from our program, but otherwise, most of them are recreational marijuana users and do fine when they get in our program. And if they're experiencing, one more thing, if they're experiencing domestic violence, we make sure that they are not in danger from their perpetrator. So, because we're not a secure facility, so if they need that, we send them to Turning Point or to TAP. Yes.
You're partly answering my question, but where do homeless people go who do not meet your criterion, but who need help?
The rescue mission, pretty much. Most of our, we have one other shelter in the valley, and that's Trust House, and Trust House has mostly veteran beds. So our families wouldn't qualify for that. Most of them go to the rescue mission. And when a family exits our program due to non-compliance, that's where they go. Yes.
How about, opiate use disorder that's being managed with medications such as the methadone clinic or Suboxone?
Yes, good question. If they are on methadone or Suboxone or any of the opiate, what do you call it? What's the,
Medications for opioid use.
thank you, thank you. I can always count on the hard ones. We will take them, and we work with their drug facility to make sure they're staying sober. What other questions? Yes,
What percentage of them are employed at the time they come in?
when they come into the program, I don't know the exact percentage, but most of them are unemployed. We average 70 to 75% having income when they exit our program. Wow. Most of them, even if it's TANF, it's more than what they had coming in.
General question.
Yes.
If you had anything you could ask for from the Roanoke community to make Family Promise better, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Can I think about that and answer it in just a second? Okay, back here, Dr. Hart.
I get this all the time, not big on it, but everybody says, well, I use marijuana, I have a marijuana card that's legal. You say, well, you go on and accept it.
We faced this a couple weeks ago. We are struggling with what to do, and we are going to be looking at that. This particular family was staying in one of our apartments because it was pre-rotational. And so because he actually had extreme pain from some dental issues, and we let him use while he was there. That it really helped, and we made sure he was staying pretty sober. So marijuana is good for pain. Yes.
It seems like y'all are so successful. Is there any interest in trying to expand it, or do you feel like, because obviously the need's so great throughout the community, but do you feel like part of the reason you're so successful is that you're able to keep it small and then
Yes, good question.
you all know that you can
And
get
then I promise, Bill, I'll get back to your question. If we were to increase, we would need double the congregations to do a second rotation. And Roanoke just does not have the capacity to do that. You would think, since there's a church on every street corner, that would work. But many are not at all interested in being involved. So we plan to keep the shelter piece the way it is. We are expanding other programs to help with that. So what would I want? I would want affordable housing. here's an example, and it's not necessarily somebody that would qualify for our program, but it was a woman. She was 76 years old. She lived in the same place for 40 years. She paid rent. She was living on a limited income. Her rent went up from $750 to $1,250. And she couldn't afford to live there anymore. And immediately they gave her less than a month's notice, which was not proper, but anyway. And she had no place to go. And that's what we need more than anything. Now, how to solve that problem, you know, people, it's determining what is affordable and determining who should qualify for that is the big issue in the Roanoke Valley. We are trying really hard to work with the city of Roanoke. We have zoning issues with the city. And we want to think they're really involved, but in some ways they just want to gloss it over. The affordable housing piece is the one piece that we really need.
The family promise programs in adjacent cities like Oxford and Lynchburg.
There's one in Shenandoah. There are other programs similar to ours, but not a family promise.
Okay.
There's one in Harrisonburg. There's one, they do thermal shelters in Charlottesville and Christiansburg.
So you don't have any partnering opportunities with cities close by?
No.
So what's been really interesting to me are the common themes for those of you who are here for last week's presentation and then are here again this week. And I'll be interested to hear what the themes are that carry across the issue of homelessness in the Roanoke Valley in next week's conversation as well. So thank you very much for
My
being
pleasure.
very much.
Fundraising, I think.
Thank you.